Tired of restless nights? At Lisa, we know good sleep is essential for mental, physical, and emotional health. From memory foam mattresses to hybrids that keep you cool all night long, Lisa's mattresses offer exceptional comfort and support with free delivery and 100 nights to try out your mattress in the comfort of your home. For a limited time, save up to $700 off select mattresses plus 2 free pillows. Go to lisa.com/iHeart for an additional $50 off mattresses and select goods. Exclusions apply. See lisa.com for more details.
Cruising out of Port Canaveral? Don't miss the boat. It's time to set the cruise control with a trip to Cocoa Beach. With hotels and resorts just minutes away from the ships at Port Canaveral, Cocoa Beach is the perfect place for you to get into vacation mode before your cruise. Start your cruise vacation with a walk on the beach. Cocoa Beach on Florida's Space Coast. Find out more at legendarycocobeach.com.
It's time for a Big Blue Kickoff Live.
Nobody can ever tell you that you couldn't do it, because you did.
On Giants.com.
You know what I saw? New York Giant pride.
And the Giants mobile app.
17-14 is the final. One touchdown, we are world champions. Believe it, and it will happen.
Part of the Giants Podcast Network.
Let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. Have some fun.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of Big Blue Kickoff Live right here on Giants.com and the Giants mobile app. John Schmelk, Paul Dottino with you. Big Blue Kickoff Live is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. We will be taking your calls, so get on the line, chat some Giants football with us. The Giants continue to have some coaching news. We went through the defensive coordinator stuff the last couple days with Shane Bowen. We haven't gotten Paul's take on that yet. We will get his comments on that in just a little bit. Tim Kelly, the new tight ends coach. The Giants also make some announcements yesterday. They have 3 promotions within the coaching staff and 2 new additions as well. So we'll start with the promotions first, Paul.
Yeah.
Mike Kafka will now have assistant head coach duties added to his role of offensive coordinator. Secondary coach Jerome Henderson will be named the defensive passing game coordinator. He was the defensive backs coach last year. And quarterbacks coach Shea Tierney will take on the additional role of offensive passing game coordinator. Now, I'll get to the new hires in a second. Until we hear from Brian Daboll, Paul, I don't think we really know what the responsibility changes for these coaches are going to be. Obviously, if you get a coordinator addition into your title, that probably means you have some more game planning responsibilities than you did before. But again, I think we'll have to wait till we hear from Brian Daboll to understand exactly what those additions mean. And then Mike Kafka as assistant head coach again. Not sure what additional duties, if any, that'll put on his plate. But that's something we'll have to wait to hear from Brian Daboll, whenever that might be, as to exactly what these different title changes might mean for their roles.
Yeah, very true. I think, the thing that I kind of broke it down into a simple sentence, someone had asked me about it, and they said, well, what do these promotions mean? And I said, and I'm going to read this off what I typed out to the guy. It allows coaches like this to intertwine game plan formulation with the usual assistant duties of game plan distribution and instruction. That is about the best, most generic way that I can describe the coordinator titles or the promotions that were given to these guys. Now, I've known in the past there was a passing game coordinator title given to somebody some years ago. And these are all relatively new titles that have come out in the NFL in recent years.
And it's also the titles are also a way to reward people on your staff that you like and you
Correct.
think they're doing a good job. And it's a way to probably, again, we don't know if this happened, but it can be a way to give people a little extra more money to try to keep them happy too.
Yes. And career advancement.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. But so I don't know how much of a percentage in this case. I'm going to speak generically because I can't speak to what happened in this building, right? What I can say is this. A couple of years back, I was told that a passing game coordinator, what he will do, usually it's a receivers guy, right, or a quarterback's coach, who will now intertwine some game planning in addition to, in other words, he'll go to the receivers and he'll say to the receivers, listen, this is what the quarterback is thinking, okay? This is what he wants to do on this play. This is why he wants to do it. So he's not just going, let's say, to the receivers coach or to those receivers and saying, these are the routes we have to run, and if something breaks off, this is what we're going to do. No, this happens earlier in the process where the passing game coordinator will go to the receivers and say, listen, this is the team we're playing. We're going to want to do a lot of this, and this is why. And when this happens, this is what the quarterback's thinking. So you got to get into his head. So we're going to give you some of what he's thinking so that you can process it as well and not just run the instructions that are being handed to you.
Well, I have to imagine, too, that it's on Monday or I guess it would be Tuesday when they do the game plan. You have to deliver your passing game plan to the coordinator on your side of the ball. So Shea Tierney will have his passing game plan. He'll deliver it to Mike Kafka. Mike Kafka will make whatever adjustments and additions he wants to make as the OC. Then they'll deliver that to Brian Dable, who obviously has final say. Same thing for Jerome Henderson. He'll go through it. He'll say, all right, this is what I want to do in coverage this week against this team. He'll deliver that to Shane Bowen, the defensive coordinator. And then, of course, he'll put in what he needs to put in as the DC. And then that will be, of course, be approved by Brian Dable at the top. So I think there are some probably early week game planning responsibilities with the coaches above them, too, in putting together what the overall plan is.
Hence the term game plan formulation.
Yes,
that
correct.
I threw into the sentence that I tried to explain to the one fan who asked me. So there's more of an interwoven crossing over of the assistant coaches' jobs as opposed to just being positional coaches when you become part of a coordinator.
Yeah, and Brian Dable had already described last year the way they run the offense here. It's a collaborative effort between everybody, and now it's just going to be even more collaborative. Shea Tierney is someone that has gotten interest. He did offensive coordinator interviews last year.
Yep.
So that's someone that obviously people think very highly of. He did a really nice job at the Senior Bowl as the offensive coordinator down there. A lot of energy. I thought he did a really nice job out there coaching up the guys. So all in all, I think it's a way to reward guys that they like. Obviously, Jerome Henderson did not get the defensive coordinator job. It's the way to say, Jerome, we like you. We want to give you more responsibility. We want you to be here. So all those things I think are good things as these guys now will be here heading into next year.
I wanted to ask you about Tierney, though, because you've seen him at practice here, and now you saw him at practice there in a different role. Did you notice anything different or anything that stood out?
Yeah, more vocal. I think more vocal, a little bit more energy, really running around, coaching up everybody, encouraging everybody. You don't see that quite as much with the quarterbacks, which I think is as much a cerebral type of deal as anything else. But yeah, he was coaching everybody up, after plays, going up the linemen,
you could
going
hear
up
him
the receivers.
from the field?
I could hear him from the stands.
Nice.
Yeah, he was
right.
loud, and he was
cool.
I liked what I saw about his
That's good.
About his engagement with the players.
I'm glad to hear that.
Thought it was really good. Then the two additions, you have outside linebackers coach Charlie Bullen. That was a vacancy on the staff the Giants had to fill. And same thing for defensive assistant Zach Kerr, who are guys that have connections to Shane Bowen, obviously, from his time in Tennessee, which makes sense. You bring in a DC, he wants to bring in some of his guys to help implement his system and to work with here with the New York Football Giants. So, Paul, you have not been on since the Shane Bowen news got announced. I went through a whole bunch of things yesterday.
I saw what you did, so I won't even go there.
So, but give me your overarching view, and then I'll want to get into one aspect of this I don't think we've touched on yet.
All right. I had two generic philosophies that had nothing to do with the individual people per se, that I just think where the Giants sit right now in terms of their growth and their development and, talk about year 3 of their plan, I would feel most comfortable if I were doing the hiring with a guy who has NFL DC playoff experience. Check that box. I would have felt most comfortable with a guy who had some 3-4 experience. Check that box, although he plays a pseudo with the 4-man front, having the pass rushing stand-up defensive end, who also played on the ground.
I was surprised when I back and watched a couple
games.
Landry
played on the ground a lot.
When I watched a couple games yesterday, getting ready for the show to talk about Bowen, it's a lot more even man front than odd man front when you watch that tape. So, agree.
Yeah, because Landry's up
100%.
there.
Yep.
Which, quite frankly, Thibodeau.
Same player.
You know what I mean?
100%. I don't have a concern about Thibodeau playing with his hand in the dirt. I think he's a force player at the edge. He can stop the run there just fine.
If that's what they want to do, it's fine.
I don't have a problem with
that. So we have what I think is already a good scheme fit and a guy who has NFL playoff defensive coordinator experience in the league. Quite frankly, those were the two things, more generic than anything else. Forget about all the other numbers and little details. Those two things to me were generically overriding factors that would have made me feel good about the hire. And he checked both of those boxes.
All right, so now what I want to talk about now is what he brings and how maybe some of the Giants personnel fits, right? Because that's something I didn't do that yesterday. I'm not sure if Lance did that with Howard on Tuesday, but let's do that now. We already talked about Thibodeau. I don't think either one of us thinks he's going to have an issue either standing up or having his hand in his
I don't
dirt.
think so.
I think he'll be fine.
I think it's fine.
Same thing for Azeez Ojulari on the other end. Now, you don't want Azeez Ojulari.
Will he be available?
Lining up in like the 4-eye inside the offensive tackle or anything like that.
No.
But the way they lined up, they did a lot of wide packages. There's a lot of wide 9 in that playbook with the way they line those guys up. So for most of the snaps against 11 personnel, which for fans that don't understand, that's 1 running back, 1 tight end, 3 wide receivers.
Yep.
Those 2 defensive ends with their hands in the dirt and the 4-man front, they are well outside the offensive tackle. So that's going to, I think, suit what the Giants do really well with Ojulari and Thibodeau, who are more of those, exterior attack speed rushers rather than interior power rushers.
Well, especially Ojulari.
Yep.
Because he does not have the power Thibodeau has. He just
Correct.
doesn't.
I agree.
And so he's a bend guy. And so John's right about that. If you can get him isolated on a wide situation where he can bend either inside or outside of somebody against a one-on-one, that's what you want.
Now, the interior guys I think are interesting. I watched 6 quarters, almost 2 full games. He does not have a defensive tackle lined up over the center much at all.
No.
So I'm curious to see if he makes an adjustment with Dexter, considering how much success he's had there the last couple of years, or if he wants to play him, a zero shade, which that's basically over the outside shoulder of either shoulder of the center, or just a one technique, which is right in between the guard and the center. It's not like Dexter Lawrence can't do that. He's going to have a lot of success doing that too. He'll be fine. So that's, I think, is one thing that's interesting to keep an eye on in terms of how they position Dexter in terms of the technique that he plays on the defensive front. I will say this. Watching the way they line up and the way they play, I think the need to add a true 3 technique defensive lineman has become a little bit more important. That's Jeffrey Simmons' spot. He's dominant in that spot.
Yes.
And the way they run those wide alignments, part of that is to create space for that 3 technique to work against the guards on that offensive line. So I do think that becomes, in this particular defense, without Leonard Williams here anymore, who left in the trade,
and that's
obviously,
my smile. That's my smile.
Is what you're going to have to figure out.
That's my smile, because Leonard Williams would be perfect for this. Yeah. No.
Yeah, I don't know if you're bringing in an over 30-year-old.
I'm not saying that Leonard
though.
Williams is coming
Right.
back. I don't know that. I mean, he was very happy here. The door was left open. I don't know what type of money he wants. I do know this. He had a really nice second half of the season for Seattle.
No, look, and Leonard Williams had a good year overall. In fact, I thought he was better this year than he was the previous year when he was playing with his bum arm.
And he would be a really good fit to be Jeffrey Simmons for this defense if they are so inclined.
Correct. I agree.
100%.
I'm with you on that. We saw the Titans, in terms of their run defense in 21 and 22, be 2 of the best run defenses in the league in terms of yards per play, yards per game, take your pick, rushing EPA, success rate, all the same thing. They were first in success rate, first in EPA in 2022, first in yards per game, first in yards per play. It checks literally every single box. They were the best rush defense in football in 2022. Then David Long left, their middle linebacker. So I do think you feel good about where the Giants are with Bobby Okereke in the middle there, that they can recapture some of that success that the Titans had stopping the run a couple years ago. Again, they weren't bad this year. They ranked 13th in the league, 107 yards per game, which is not a bad number. It's just not as dominant as they were the previous 2 years. So I think you feel good about Bobby Okereke and Micah McFadden as your 2 off-ball linebackers in those nickel packages. But, and I made this point yesterday, Paul, he does a lot of the same stuff that Wink did. You see a lot of 1 linebacker and 6 defensive backs, as much as you see the 2 linebackers and 5 defensive backs. So it could be another multiple safety type of deal, depending, again, and I think that's going to be personnel dependent in terms of who they bring in this offseason and who they have, because right now they frankly don't have a ton of safeties, depending if Xavier McKinney comes back or not.
Right.
So that's something they're going to have to figure out how they want to work that part of the defense.
The Titans did not have the athleticism at linebacker the Giants had this past season. That was a big difference.
And they did with David Long a couple years
Prior,
ago, but not
this past
year.
season.
That's
Not
correct.
even close.
No.
And so the first thing that all I did was I looked at some of what you had. John did a whole number workup on him and the Titans defense. I just went back and looked at a couple of their December tape.
That's what I did. Yeah, I watched the Jacksonville game and the Seattle game. Those are the two games.
And you could see immediately that McFadden, Simmons, and Okereke.
Simmons a free agent, remember?
Yes, he is a free agent. I do think he would be good in this scheme.
Yeah, in passing downs, I think he'd be fine playing off the ball. Yeah, sure.
I do. Those three guys, their range, their athleticism, their quickness, I think the Titans would have been very happy to have any one of those three guys this past year.
I'm curious to see with Deonte Banks if they play a little bit more man-to-man defense in the secondary. Their man-to-man rates, as I mentioned yesterday, and I kind of breezed through this, so I'll kind of give it to you one more time just so you have it, folks. Basically between 14th and 21st, between 14th and 20th in terms of man-to-man percentage, either anywhere between 17% and 22% of the snaps. That has gone down over the last 3 years in his time as coordinator from 22% to 17%. My guess is that has something to do with the fact that they don't have the best cornerbacks in the world in Tennessee. So I'm curious to see with Deonte Banks if they do lean into playing a little bit more man-to-man. But I will say this, too, in terms of the corners, and you can comment on all of it. He blitzes the slot corner a lot. Mm-hmm. So I do wonder if the Giants end up deciding they want to add a new slot corner, you're going to want one maybe that's a little bit bigger and a little bit more physical that can work as a blitzer a little bit more in that scheme. So I do think that position takes a little bit more importance given how they used him in that defense.
Did I read the number wrong? I believe the number that I saw was they were the 10th fewest in terms of percentage of blitzes this past season. Did I read that wrong?
Yeah, they were 22nd in blitz rate overall. Yep.
That's now
26th the year before, 22nd the year before that. So it's again, he's been, Paul, even more consistent, anywhere between 22% and 27% blitz rate over the past 3 years.
Yeah, so that's quite a contrast to what we've been used to seeing here the last couple of years.
Bigger number, and I mentioned this yesterday, but I'll throw it at you in case you didn't notice it. Third down blitz rate this year, lowest in football. Last year, second lowest in football.
I did see that.
So he does not blitz a lot on third down, but he does stunt a lot on third down. So he likes to bring four but run games and run a lot of simulated pressures to try to keep a lot of guys in coverage but create pressure using other means other than blitzing.
He seems to be, and when we finally get a chance to talk to him, I have not seen him yet. I see him as more of a deception-based coordinator.
I agree with that.
As opposed to a heat-seeking missile, pressure breaks pipes coordinator. He's more of a deceptive guy.
Yeah.
Which, quite honestly...
He'll try to disguise his coverages in the back end, things like that.
That's what Patrick Graham favored when he was here.
Yes.
Now, I'm not saying they're the same guy, but the philosophy is based more on that style.
Yeah, just to give you an idea, and I said this yesterday, but I'll throw it at you, Paul. Last year... Cover 1, 17%, cover 2, 12%, cover 3, 30%, cover 4, 22%, cover 6, 3%. So he will mix up his coverages a lot.
Yep.
He's, he'll mix and match. He doesn't like stuff in the box, and the impressive thing about those running numbers is that he did it without putting 8 men in the box. In the 2 years where they were first and second, they were second and third in terms of fewest times they put 8 guys in the box. They were able to do it without stuff in the box, which is really a credit to the way they played up front in Tennessee to stop the run those years. So he does like to have a lot of guys in coverage. That's his preference. More of a zone guy than a man guy.
Mm-hmm.
I said this yesterday. I'd like to have the big plays cut down on a little bit.
Yeah.
Too many 20-plus plays through the air.
I saw that number.
And maybe a few more takeaways, which has not been a huge strength either. So those are my basic overlooking things that I talked about yesterday that I'd like to get your
You know what's funny, though? The style of defense the Giants played this year should not have necessarily lent itself to a ton of takeaways, and look how many they wound up getting. So you can't always, and again, this is always a Lance thing, you can't always predict turnovers, right? He loves to talk about that all the time.
Oh, he's right.
And he's absolutely right.
100% right.
So to marry the potential of whatever the turnovers are going to be to the scheme, there's a tendency there, but that doesn't mean it's going to happen.
True. Pretty consistent year to year, though, in terms of takeaways. So if it was more up and down year to year,
I
understand.
Know what I'm
saying?
Well, sometimes it's just simply about your guys' ability to make plays.
It was interceptions, too. That was the difference. I mean, the fumbles were the same. It was 6, 6, and 8 the last 3 years.
Fumbles are even less likely to predict.
Fumbles are a lot of luck. right? You can pound and strip at the ball all you want. If the guy's holding it right, it's not coming out.
And quite frankly, I can't tell you how many times I would be angry because the Giants would have an opportunity with opponents' fumbles but not recover them.
Yeah, that's it.
And I would be like,
100%.
It's on the ground. You got to get it.
Then the interceptions were 16, 14, and then 6 this past year. And again, that goes back to the defensive backfield talent group, which again, not great. And the other thing I mentioned yesterday with the personnel is I thought the personnel kind of deteriorated a little bit over the last 3 years in the Titans defense.
Oh, yes.
A big reason?
Yes.
In the last 2 drafts, 1 defensive player was taken in the top 5 rounds. That's it.
Yeah.
So they really didn't do much to try to add to that line. All right, Big Blue Kickoff Live is presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the New York Football Giants. Go subscribe to the Giants Huddle podcast, folks. We have a lot of great interviews on there. I just set something up. I'm going to talk to, hopefully tomorrow, Paul Koharski, who covers the Titans, and he's going to give us the lowdown on Shane Bowen. That'll air next Monday. We have Jim Nagy, who runs the Senior Bowl. That's going up tomorrow on the Giants Huddle podcast, so make sure you check all those out. And up there right now, we have Eric Eager, who we do some team-building conversations with him. He's from Sumer Sports. So make sure you go check out the Giants Huddle podcast, Giants.com, Giants mobile app, or just search for Giants Huddle on your favorite podcast platform. And while you're at the Giants.com/podcast page, make sure you click on Draft Season. That's our draft podcast. Tony Pauline and I just put up our Senior Bowl and Shrine Bowl review. Make sure you go check that out. Draft Season, again, you know where to find it. Search for it on your favorite podcast platform. And for all of our podcasts, if you're on Apple Podcasts, please leave that 5-star positive review. It takes a second. You just click it. It goes on there. It helps our visibility. People search for Giants Podcast. The more of those good reviews you have, we'll get pushed to the front of the search thing. More people listen. We get to make more money selling ads or whatever we else do, sponsorships, then we can do more of these because they're successful. It all comes down to how many people are listening, which depends on how many positive ratings
we appreciate loyalty.
Yes, and we know how many of you have been with for a long time, so we appreciate you guys checking that box, literally and figuratively, for us. All right, 201-939-4513, 201-939-4513. Tim in Charleston, licking his wounds from yesterday. He is back.
Dan told me I was second, but I'm happy to be first. And I just wanted to say, John, I was not upset. I've seen that happen before, where you run out of time and you ask Pearson to tell the last caller to call back the next day.
Because Tim, I didn't want to shortchange you. I wanted to make sure you got your full call in.
I get it. No, it's fine. Like I said, I wasn't upset.
Okay.
But I heard you say it, so I'm like, well, why am I going to wait for Pearson to pick up the phone to tell me when I heard John say it? So I just hit end.
Oh, okay.
You know? And so that way I can
my
go
understanding
back
is
and
that my understanding, Tim, is there might have been an expletive spoken over the phone when we told you to call back. That's what I heard.
No.
Okay.
No. I might have said, "Oh, damn," or something.
Okay.
Like that, but, I wasn't. But anyway, so I got a couple of a handful of quick little things today.
Yes.
First, I wanted to say that I'm happy with the 2 coaching hires. Getting someone who has experience as an OC to come and coach our tight ends. Excuse me. A little frog in my throat there. I think that should be a win-win, right? I mean, this someone who understands the entire offense, top to bottom, has game planned, and maybe that even gets the tight ends more involved because he works with Kafka a little bit more.
Yeah.
And on Bowen, I'm happy with that hire. The one thing I was going to say yesterday was I was going to agree 100% with Lance, which I like to do to just keep him happy once in a while. Because the reason I was going to call, and then he said it, so I said, no, I'm going to call. I had trouble getting in earlier yesterday, but anyway. So is that, all the numbers and all the statistics and all the trends with Bowen, it is definitely the personnel grouping is going to affect that.
Of course.
So, I mean, numbers can go up, numbers can go down, and hopefully the good performances don't deteriorate, and the lesser ones from Tennessee we do better at. So I'll say that. Now I've got a couple of I kind of feel like we need to take a cornerback, like maybe in the second round. I don't know. I listen to like the last 3 draft seasons last night because I couldn't sleep. So there's so much information in there. I can never remember specific items that I want to. And then I have a question about contracts and void years. So I have seen, there was an article the other day, Dexter Lawrence, Daniel Jones, Bobby Okereke, and
Andrew
who's
Thomas.
the fourth one? Andrew Thomas, thank you. Now, can you add a void year to an existing contract, or
Yes.
does it have to be? You can. So
Yes.
you could just go to the player and say,
You got to reconfigure his money, though.
Though in a lot of times these contracts now, they'll have it baked into the contract. If it's not a pay cut, teams don't even need permission to restructure. They can just restructure. So, and usually that just means the players are getting the money up front,
Right,
instead of getting it later, which they're usually going to be in favor of anyway. So, but yes, correct. Yes, they can add void years to a current contract, which basically helps spread out and move money from the current year into future seasons.
Now, do you know how to calculate that on your own, or it just depends on how the negotiation works?
No, I mean
it
it depends on the contract. Let's say, for example, a guy has make it easy. Let's say a guy has a base salary of $12 million, right? And he has 2 years left on his deal, right? You can turn $12 million into signing bonus, and that reduces, you get 6 in 1 year, 6 in the other, and that you save $6 million on the cap. Well, if you say, all right, well, we're going to get clever here. We're going to add a void year to that contract. Then you can take that $12 million and spread it over 3 years. So that gets it down to a $4 million hit each year, which saves you $8 million down from the 12 on the current year. Or you can get really crazy and say, we're going to add 2 void years to your contract. Then that gets it down to 3 because the $12 million spread over 4 years instead of 3.
Wait,
and that's basically how it works.
2 void years?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think Jalen Hurts is like 3 void years on his deal.
Oh, that's right.
The problem is you will pay that credit card bill as those years accumulate and come back to haunt you.
And then you will have dead money for a player no longer on your roster.
And that could go on for a
your
while.
Contract. That's correct.
That's a kicking the can item.
Yes, sir.
That.
Yes, sir.
That's right.
I mean, I think somebody like Dexter, it's a safer bet because he's been, healthy and got knockwood, and he's been healthy and.
Those are the guys you would be willing to use it on. Guys that have been healthy, dependable, and you have full confidence that they are going to play out their contracts. The guys that it kills you on, if you set up void years and set up a lot of dead money at the end of these deals, then you cut the guy early, then it really hammers you on the salary cap.
Yeah, usually the first priority is you want a young veteran.
Yes.
That's the key. If he's an old veteran, you're basically putting yourself in a really bad pickle.
You're in trouble. Yeah. So, John, you said something earlier about Bowen's D-line and how more often than not there's 4 guys. We thought it was a 3-4, but then you talked about Thibodeau and Ojulari on the ends as true edge rushers, flying around the outside of the tackle shoulder to try the Y move, as Paul called it, with Dex pushing up the middle. But the question I had is, if those 2 guys are out there standing up, or, even if Thibodeau has his hand in there, whatever. But
so would Ojulari. Ojulari would have his hand in the dirt in his defense, too, by the way, just FYI.
Oh, he would?
Yeah, probably.
Okay. So would they count as 2 of the 4?
Yes.
Or would there? Oh, they would.
Yes.
Well,
okay.
Here's where it gets sticky, right? In the conventional terms, a 3-4 means 3 down linemen because the number technically means how many down linemen you have. So 3-4 is 3 down linemen, 4 linebackers. But like when the Giants had a 3-4, Lawrence Taylor was playing stand-up defensive end. So it was a 4-man front, even though it was a 3-4.
And again,
you see, it can be both.
And again, that's your base defense. And the Titans were not in their base defense a lot last year. Teams aren't in their base defense a lot anymore. And you did see the Titans go to that more traditional, 3 defensive linemen, 4 linebacker, 5-man front set when teams went to like 3 tight ends. Then they go to their base defense. The problem is that teams are in 3 wide receivers 70% of the time now.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's when you're going to reduce down. You're going to have 2, and this is basically what the Giants did this year. It's no different. They had 2 stand-up linebackers behind the line, or a linebacker and a safety, depending on the down and distance.
Could be.
And then you have your 2 tackles in the middle, and then you have Ojolari and Thibodeau as the two guys on the edge rushing the passer.
I mean, to be frank with you, because of the predominantly 3 wide receiver sets, yes, to put a number to what John's talking about, your first number very often is only 2. Because the first number is supposed to indicate defensive linemen, guys with their hands in the dirt. And often you only have, on a lot of these third down packages, you only have 2 down linemen. Those are your 2 defensive tackles. And then you'll have a stand-up linebacker, or Hottie Ward sometimes was standing up as a stand-up defensive end. You know,
stand up or hand in the dirt doesn't matter. I want to know how many guys are on the line of scrimmage. And you will have 4 guys on the line of scrimmage in those
sometimes
sub-packages.
5.
Sometimes.
Sometimes.
If you're blitzing, sure. But it's usually your standard package in those nickel or dime situations is going to be 2 defensive tackles, 2 edge rushers, and they'll all be on the line of scrimmage trying to rush the passer.
See, that's why you don't use the 4-3-3-4 terminology in that case.
No.
What you're saying is
we're
using
in base defense.
Bingo. You're just saying we're using a 4-man front. We're using a 5-man front.
Well, you're a nickel or dime, right?
Yeah, and you have to call it out that way. I mean, there was a time when Belichick would put Banks and Taylor standing up together next to the 3 down linemen, and it was a 5-man front.
Front.
But it was right. But it was still I know I didn't want to confuse them.
I know.
But it's a 5-man front. But it's really still a 3-4 defense because you only have 3 down linemen.
Correct.
And that's why it gets very, very technical and confusing, and semantics play a big role in this.
They do.
Can I have 1 more minute?
Yeah, sure.
All right. So I don't know if either of you guys read New York Post Sports at all, but Mike Vaccaro happens to be my favorite sports columnist.
He's outstanding. Multiple award
he's
winner.
Amazing. He has a great column today on what we call Super Bowl I. It was really the AFL NFL championship game back in 1965 between Green Bay and KC. And apparently, once somebody had a way before VCRs and everything to record it, because the leagues didn't.
Right.
And this is, there's like, I forget what station it's on, right? I think
it was on 2 networks. It was on 2 networks simultaneously, and nobody has the full tape of either one of those networks' broadcasts. So over the years, NFL Films with their...
This is the full broadcast.
Oh, somebody has it?
Done by a private, yes. It was done by somebody who was like...
I didn't see this column. Oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, somebody, right, isn't this true, Tim? Somebody passed away, and they were going through the stuff in the guy's basement. They found the tape of the game, right? Isn't that what happened?
Maybe that was it. I don't
think
know
so.
This is in Vaccaro's piece today?
No, they played it on...
Yeah.
They aired it, and they had a special showing of it or something like that last week.
What? Oh, I didn't even realize that. I missed it.
I think they did.
See, NFL Films a few years ago, I'll let you finish, because of all the miles and miles of footage that they took with their NFL Films cameras, they pieced together the whole game with all of their NFL Films footage, and they created a full broadcast from all of their pieces. But it wasn't the actual original broadcast. You're telling me the original network broadcast is out? Somebody's got it?
This one has the original play-by-play.
Wow.
And Frank Gifford doing color.
Oh, my goodness.
It's funny because a different guy did play-by-play in the first half than the second half. And
I can't wait to see it. Oh, my. I can't believe I missed it.
I'll email you a link to it, John.
Okay.
And then you can share it with Paul.
Yes, please.
You guys have the app.
Please.
Right. Hey, thanks for all your time.
Great stuff.
Now I'm searching for this. Maybe, did I miss that somehow? I don't know. I thought they had somebody put the video up somewhere. They had some kind of debut thing. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I somehow missed that.
Well, hey, John, if somebody actually has a full network tape of that game, it really is. And I know an executive.
I read something about that somewhere. I don't know. I don't remember.
Let me say this. 20 years ago, okay, I knew an executive, a guy who wound up becoming vice president at ESPN, and he said to me that they had been digging into NFL Films archives and contacting everyone and anyone that they could from the networks and all the league people and everything. He said to me, that is our holy grail. If we can ever get the actual full game network copy of what was AFL NFL championship game number 1, If we can ever get that full network copy, it's the holy grail.
No, this is what it is. No, you're right. They pieced it together with the NFL Films tape. But apparently, again, I did a quick Google search here. Apparently, maybe this is where I pieced it kind of together on my own. There is a middle-aged nurse in North Carolina whose dad taped the game on a quadruplex video machine. I don't know what that is.
I have no idea what that is.
And he passed it on to him. The networks wiped all their feeds, so they didn't have it. But apparently this guy tried to sell the tapes. The league didn't want to buy them, but apparently there is a tape out there that somebody has. But again,
wow,
I don't know where I got. They aired something of an old Super Bowl like last week or something like that. I don't remember.
That might have been the one that NFL Films pieced together.
Maybe.
And they did that a few years ago. They were finally able to dig far enough.
This was it, Dan. Thank you. Dan just put it in the thing. This is what I saw. The Paley Center for Media, the media museum in the city,
They found
the
it.
Hall of Fame thing. Long thought lost. They received the tape from that guy. Okay.
Oh, wow.
I got it. Okay. From a Scranton television station, I guess where the father worked, right? And they played it at the Paley Center last week. That's where I got it from.
Oh, wow.
I knew I read that somewhere, and that's what it was.
But you had to go there to see it.
I believe that's correct, yes. They had a special screening of it last week at the Paley Center. I knew I read that somewhere. Thank you, Dan. I'm not going crazy. I knew there was something going on with that.
That needs to show up on NFL Network.
Yeah.
It really does.
Well, I think there might be based on what I was reading online briefly, there might be a controversy over how much he wanted to sell the tape to the league for.
Oh, my.
So I'll just leave it there.
Well, you
guys
remember
can do your own Google search.
You'll remember NFL Films did the same thing, and they pieced together the 1958 championship game between the Giants and the Colts, the, quote, greatest game ever played some years ago. They pieced that game together with NFL Films footage, and they colorized it.
Yeah.
And it was really cool.
All right, let's go to our buddy Coach Marvin in Delaware. Coach, what's going on, man?
John, Paul, how y'all doing?
Hi, Coach.
Yeah, it's good to hear Paul get excited. He's one of those historians, and that was a historian story my man just told us about that game.
Hey, look, Paul has, I believe Paul's watched every Super Bowl live, if I'm not mistaken.
No.
Well, yeah, I think, Paul, I've seen it. I think I started with the Colts and Cowboys game.
1970, that's my first recollection is the Colts and Cowboys, the Chuck Howley Super Bowl.
Yeah, that's the first one I heard.
That was number 4, John. Number 5. Actually, you know what? I remember the Chiefs-Vikings. I remember the Chiefs-Vikings in 70. The one we're talking about, 71.
Yeah, 71.
I remember the Chiefs-Vikings because...
That was 70, right?
Yes. That was the one after the Jets.
Correct.
Super Bowl number 4.
Yeah.
And what I remember about that was we had an old black and white TV at my parents' house. And everybody knew the Vikings as the Purple People Eaters. Mm-hmm. So I remember telling my dad, I want to watch the Purple People Eaters. And because I kind of like purple, I was always a blue first, but I kind of liked purple too.
Paul, closet Vikings fan.
So, so I was like, come on, I want to see the Purple People Eaters beat the Chiefs. And we had to watch the game on the black and white television.
So there was no purple.
There was no purple. And I remember being very disappointed watching the game.
That Vikings team, by the way, one of the better kind of groups of players that never figured out a way.
Yes,
they were
outmanned along the line of scrimmage. Again, the trenches always win by the Chiefs, and of course they whacked Minnesota and Jack Kemp.
Well, the Chiefs also had who was the Chiefs play caller that year? They had an offensive coordinator. I read a book and he was mentioned there as one of the
Lenny Dawson
innovators.
Was the quarterback.
And they kind of they worked some things around.
Joe Cap
to kind of work the aggressiveness of that Vikings front against them, and that's how they kind of carved them up a little bit.
So anyway, I do remember watching that game in black and white TV and being very disappointed that the black and white Purple People Eaters got whacked. Dude, that's me, Coach Marvin, yes.
Yeah, I remember those days. Because I wasn't into the Giants, I had just moved from North Carolina in '68, and the Jets was the big thing when we got to Newark.
Well, sure.
And then later on, I became a Vikings fan because the Giants, back in those days, they weren't covering football like they do now. You couldn't even see highlights of a game until
Friday night.
Warner Wolf used to show us some of the game on the Eyewitness News. We
Yeah,
could see some of those games.
On Friday
And
night, there was This Week in Football with Pat Summerall and Tom Brookshire.
Pat
It was
Summerall,
on at
Tom
11:30 p.m. at night on Channel
Saturday.
11 in New York. And
On
that's the
Saturday,
only way I
game-
could see home highlights from
Yeah.
Giants-Yankee Stadium games.
Yep.
I
That's
know.
the only way we could see any games. The
I know,
San
it was
Diego
terrible.
Games,
Yep.
all those games. Yeah, that was it wasn't, and that go back to what I was thinking about when I heard John. Sometimes John says things like I'm thinking of it a couple of days before, and yesterday John got on a caller, and it was exactly what I was thinking. John, and you was talking to someone that was talking about Dayball.
Yeah.
And he wanted him fired. He's not good. And y'all was trying to say, well, he was a good coach when he was coach of the year, and now he lost.
He was focusing on
6-10.
Dable's relationship with Daniel Jones was the focus of the call.
And that goes back to how things are. Everybody has a voice now. When me and Paul just talking about, everybody didn't have a voice. We had to wait to get news on guys. And what I wanted to say to him, I'm not saying he's wrong, but he's kind of wrong. I think he's going too far because you were right, John, and I was going to say the same thing. You argue with everybody. You argue with your kids, which you said yesterday, John. You argue with your wife. You argue with your brother, your mama. You have disagreements all the time. And as a coach, I'm going to give them their names because these guys played a role on my staff. Mike Jones was my defensive coach, which was really good, very aggressive coach as far as calling plays. And Kenny Thompson was my offensive coordinator. And we were the core of the team as far as the coaching staff. And I had other guys that come in, but those two was really my left and right hand people. But if we would get on the sidelines sometimes and get intense games, we could go back and forth, and it's not going to be pretty.
Of course.
And some parents used to see that and think we didn't like each other. They would ask me something, is everything okay? Sometime at the end of the game. I said, no. That's just being competitive. We're both fighting for the same thing. So sometimes I don't agree with what they're doing or what they're doing at the time or what they're saying. So I can say something and he don't like it. He gonna say something back, and I'm gonna say something back. But at being like Dabo in the position he's in, I was in on the lower level, high school and youth. I was in charge of that team. Whatever we arguing about, I can take your opinion, whatever you have to say, and I can use it or I can disregard it. Because it comes down, the team, it was my decision, everything that was going on with that team.
Yep. I
was responsible for it. Everybody's going to come back to me. The board that hired me, they're going to come back to me when things don't go wrong. And as far as coaches leaving, well, that's his choice. If you choose to leave, I understand it. I wish you well. I had coaches I had to get rid of, doing things that they shouldn't be doing, that was going to come back and bite me. And he may not have liked it, but I had to tell him, you have to go. I can't keep you on the staff.
No,
you
you're
have
right.
to go. And you can look at it like, oh, they don't get along, they hate them. And hey, it's business. Anything we do in life, if you're supervisors and stuff like that, guess what? People don't like you. And when I was in the military, there's a lot of sergeants in the basic training. I hated them. But my life was on the line with those guys, and I did what they told me to do.
Coach Marvin, really, the crux of this whole thing is that the networks have so many more cameras in every stadium than they used to. And so often they will just stick one camera and point it at the sideline, and they're waiting for any kind of emotional reaction they can come up with.
They have both coach
Okay.
ISO the entire game.
And they can't wait to throw that on your TV screen. I would venture to tell you, okay, from being in the stadium all those years when Parcells was head coach of the Giants, that, and NFL Films has shown some of this in years gone by, he had some of the most vicious, expletive-laced conversations, I will say, okay? Conversations is a very nice term that he had with every one of his assistants, players, etc., down the line.
And his quarterback.
For sure. And because they did not stick a camera right down his throat like they do today and didn't show it every 15 seconds on the network telecast, well, nobody gave a horse's ass. Okay?
Right.
I mean, that's the
even
truth.
Tom Coughlin used to yell at people all the time.
Absolutely.
Are you kidding me?
You know?
Yeah.
And take it from somebody who 14 years ago, when I started traveling with the team, I'm down on the sideline for most road games. I know firsthand. I don't even have to see it on somebody's phone, Twitter feed, or television screen. I see what goes on down there all the time.
Right.
I know.
Right.
This is part of the game. That's it.
Yeah,
it
and
is part
the
of the
point I
game.
made yesterday, Paul, what Coach Marvin's referring to real quickly, you know, the whole Daniel Jones tossing the tablet thing,
Right.
which is now transcended to him winging it at Daniel Jones's face, which is,
Right.
that's the way people
No,
talk about
that's
it,
not what-
where he basically just took it and he kind of tossed it at, he basically tossed it gently into Shea Tierney's lap, which is
Yes.
basically what it was.
Yes.
And the point I made yesterday, well, when you're interacting with the people that are closest to you, if they just take one shot of your worst moment with that person, they're going to think you hate each other.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
No question.
I mean, whether it's your kid, to Marvin's point, your wife, or whoever,
No
you
doubt.
take the worst interaction you've had with that person, and that's what people think of you. Yeah, you're going to look
Right.
pretty bad. But that's not necessarily what the relationship is.
The video
No.
can be taken out of context just like you can with a long paragraph of words or a long
sure.
quote.
Absolutely.
The same thing can happen.
Yep.
And it does. In today's society, you betcha it's going to happen.
All right,
that
Coach,
way.
final point.
Well, and that's definitely because you're talking now that the country is now in this alternative facts thing that's going on, where the alternative facts are really lies.
I like that.
People are believing things that, they could take the truth and kind of twist it into whatever story they want it to be.
That's true.
And people buy
Yeah,
into it
yeah.
without researching. And people need to research. Who wrote the article? Y'all should have asked them.
But you know what?
John.
The problem is, Coach Marvin, now with the way the internet is, enough people that don't have a clue write stuff on the internet. You can find anything
Yes.
on the internet to support any opinion.
That's right.
So it's just a matter of who's
No.
writing the damn thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that has been some of the issue, John, is the internet, and they getting their news from the internet. You can get some news from it, but use your mind to say, okay, you got to feather your way through the truth and find out, because there's always one side, and then there's another
Well,
side.
Coach,
and in the
my
middle, there's the
theory
truth.
is that if it's on the internet, it has to be true. And I'm just going to stick with that moving forward, all right? I appreciate the
real
call.
quick.
Be good, Coach.
Yeah, real quick.
Real quick. Y'all were talking about the defense and the defensive front, and I was in high school. We ran what they called 50. Those were 50 series when we had 5 guys on the line of scrimmage. 2 may be standing up, 3 have their hands down. Those were 50s that we called in high school.
Yep.
Now, if they're going to go with with these defenses, and Thibodeau is going to be on the line, like that guy was talking to you again, John, yesterday, said that Thibodeau was underrated. Not understanding Thibodeau had to do a lot of different things that he normally didn't do in college. If you put his hand into the ground and you turn him loose, you may see a different Thibodeau.
Yeah, we'll see. Thank you, Coach.
All right, guys.
Appreciate it. Yeah, I would say this. Kayvon Thibodeau will not be in coverage as much next year.
No. I don't think so either.
Now, again, he wasn't in coverage a ton the last
Not
2
much.
years either.
Not much.
But I think he'll be more of your traditional down defensive end. And by the way, people forget he's 260 pounds. He's not a small man. He'll be fine. Like, he's just as big as, the weight's distributed differently, but him and Michael Strahan, Paul, very similarly sized, no?
I would at the end of Michael's career when Michael
he
dropped
slimmed
down.
down. Yeah, he
when he
slimmed
dropped
down,
down,
yeah.
yes. Michael was down at about 255
Yeah.
by the time he finally finished, I believe. I think the thing for me with Thibodeau, and I believe this with him and Ojulari both, even though Thibodeau was already stronger than Ojulari, and I don't know specifically what they're lifting, but I'd like to see both of those guys put on some more power. The power quotient for both guys, in my opinion, needs to be better. I don't think it will necessarily hurt their speed or their athleticism. If you don't, we know Thibodeau, Ojulari bulked up a couple years ago, 12 pounds. Remember, he told us that. And, unfortunately,
He's not been able to stay healthy since.
it still hasn't happened.
Yes.
So I don't know how they make that happen, but I'd like to see more power out of both players.
So it's Hank Stram, who's the head coach of the Chiefs,
Yes,
by the way. He was
that's
also,
for sure.
He was also their play caller. And a little note here, you got this off Wikipedia, Dan, or you got this off of something like that? And this was the quote. I remember this from my reading. Stram concluded that the Vikings' aggressiveness on defense also made them susceptible to trap runs. So they ran a lot of traps, and Mike Garrett's rushing touchdown came on a trap play.
That is when you watch the NFL Films highlights, and he's constantly screaming about trap. And he's got a very fancy name for it. I used to remember exactly what it was.
And he has that, and he has like that very that very distinct accent in the way Stram talks.
He almost talks like Daffy Duck a little bit,
a
right?
little bit. Back to the trap.
And he's got the paper
correct.
rolled up in his
Yeah, he
hands,
does.
the game
That's
plan.
correct, yes.
It is one of the great classic NFL films of all time. And, great stuff. Great stuff. But I thought that there was someone else on his staff that you were referring to. I should have just said Hank Stram.
I thought there was, but now that it must have been Stram that I was thinking of.
Anyway.
Let's go to, I'm sorry, you got one more?
No, I just think it's good to get some of Coach Marvin's perspective on some of that stuff because, he's got a lot of years of football in his pocket.
Hey, when I used to, just playing pickup basketball, the guys you argued with the most were your closest friends. Those are the guys you battled the most with on the court. When you play them, you yell at each other, and then you go home and you.
But I mean,
hang out.
he's actually been a head coach.
Correct,
in
absolutely.
the battle
Yeah.
on the sideline, even though it's high school.
No, he gets it.
He's been in that, and that's cool.
Charlie in Portland, Maine. Hi, Charlie. How are you?
Hey, John. Hey, Paul.
So now, before you start, I have a question for you. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So I noticed you switched your Twitter profile picture.
Yeah, that's me in a younger state.
Okay. You kind of have like a Weird Al Yankovic thing going. I'm not going to lie.
As if we couldn't figure that out. Yeah. I was thinking, about 40 years ago there, Charlie?
I don't know if it was that. Yeah, it could have been 40 years ago.
All right.
Anyway.
Hey, look.
Looking good, Charlie.
I just want to let you guys know, you guys should call me coach, too. Because I actually coached a junior varsity high school basketball team. Basketball.
That does, Charlie. That does not count. And let me ask you this: what was your record for that junior varsity team?
It was Baxter School for the Deaf, and we were probably 2 in 10.
Okay.
And you got fired in mid-season, right?
We had a lot of fun. They couldn't, they didn't, and I never hollered at them, not like some of our coaches do. But anyway, let me get to my.
Well, Charlie, I would hope you weren't screaming at deaf high school kids. I mean, come on, jeez. I would hope you're not doing that. Come on.
Well, the good news is they couldn't hear his complaints.
Well, you can do a lot with sign language, I tell you.
Go ahead. Oh, yes, you can.
Do you know sign language, Charlie?
All right. What?
Do you know sign language?
Yeah,
oh,
I do.
Cool.
I mean,
Excellent.
I'm a little rusty now, but yeah.
Okay.
You might want to use
Good
that
for
next
you.
time you call Lance. Go ahead.
Look, I've been watching Dable
So many
Unstable.
Yes.
All right?
Yes.
Dable Unstable is, I've seen him on the sidelines. I see what this guy does. And all I can say is they didn't want Kafka to leave. Not that Dable didn't want him to leave. Myra didn't want him to leave.
Who the hell is Myra?
Yeah, the president of the organization.
John Mara.
Charlie.
Mara.
Mara?
Charlie,
Like
first of all, how do
Mara?
you know that?
Right.
How do you know that's true? You're just guessing. You have no
No,
idea if
I'm
that's
not
true or not.
guessing.
Okay,
Yes,
wait.
you
Let's.
Let me finish.
Okay, go ahead.
All right,
Let
go
him
ahead.
finish. Go ahead.
And then you guys can tear it apart if you
Sure.
want. All right?
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
Look, it's true. As far as I've seen, all the reports that Shane had to go on the cans and listen to Dable for 4 games because he was screaming and hollering at his coaches, and they couldn't even do the plays and do what they had to do. All right? So when they stopped him, Kafka, from going to Seattle, I think they decided that all these teams want this guy as a head coach. He interviewed last year. He interviewed this year. And I think Dable's on the hot seat, and I think they're keeping him around. And what do? They paid him hush money for everybody in the organization to be quiet and also made him assistant head coach in case Dable implodes again on the sideline.
Charlie?
And they've got their head coach.
What year was it that aliens from Mars came down and abducted you for 6 months before bringing you back to Maine?
Paul,
do you know what year that was?
Paul,
Charlie,
and you can do
Charlie.
what you want to do.
Charlie,
but
I just want to make sure I have this
I'm
straight.
telling you,
I want to
there's
make
truth to this.
I want to make
Go
sure.
ahead.
I want to make sure I have this straight.
Yep.
In your mind, this is what happened. The season ended. Brian Dable says, "I want Mike Kafka to go. I don't want him here. I'm sick of him. I don't like him. He's a bad play caller. I want him
he
out."
took his play calling away, and
And-
Kafka wanted to go too.
And Joe Shane and John Mara said, "No, we're going to force you to keep this coach, promote him against your wishes," and that's what happened.
And by the way, you will now work so closely with him 24/7 for the next year, where you guys are going to be connected at the hip.
So you're saying the Giants management forced Dable to work hand in hand with somebody he thinks stinks and he can't stand?
That's brilliant, Charlie.
Charlie,
That's brilliant.
Charlie,
They wanted to. No, because Dable's going to take over the play calling anyway. Kafka's not going to have much to
First
do
of all,
with it.
first of all, we don't know if that's true or not.
Well, how come?
Charlie.
How come they gave the quarterback coach the raise? They gave him more money. They gave Kafka more money, and they gave him a raise to be the passing coordinator guy. Their quarterback.
Charlie,
coach?
we told you why at the beginning of the show, some of the reasons why you would do that. You need to go back and listen to Coach Marvin, who will tell you not to believe everything you read. Don't believe everything you read.
You don't have to be a moron.
Go buy
on the
some Marvel
sideline.
comic books and read about Spider-Man. That stuff has more
you
truth
don't
to
have
it
to
than
be
some
a
of the stuff that
moron
you
on
read.
the sideline.
Charlie,
Pete
look,
Carroll
Charlie
was not that kind of coach.
Charlie, Brian
All right?
Dable doesn't yell or scream any more than Tom Coughlin did.
I'm talking
doesn't?
about Pete Carroll. Does he scream and holler at
What does
everybody?
that have to do with anything?
I'm picking the
I'm
most
just saying
recent.
to Paul, you
I'm
think everybody has to be Parcells?
No, they don't have to be, but it doesn't disqualify you. I mean, Tom Coughlin was a great coach here. He's
You don't
going to
think
make the
this
Hall
has
of
been-
Fame.
you
Tom
don't think
Coughlin
this
yelled
whole
and
thing has
screamed at
been a
people.
mess, John?
Do
You
I
don't
think
this
Brian
whole
Dable
thing's
and Wink
been a mess?
Martindale got along? No, obviously not. He's not here anymore. Of course not.
All right, I'm telling you.
I'm not
if
disagreeing
Dable
with that part of
implodes-
it.
If Dable implodes, guess who's going to be the interim head coach? It's going to be Kafka. That's why
Oh, he's the
there.
associate head coach. I think that's a pretty good guess. I mean, that's not going out on a
Charlie,
limb
this
here,
is
Charlie.
one of your more off-base calls in a long time.
Thank you, Charlie.
Have a good day.
Appreciate the call.
Just wow.
Cliff in New York. Hi, Cliff.
Hey, guys.
Please,
Interesting show.
get us back on
Lot of
track,
ups
please. Come on, Cliff.
Ups and downs in the show, man. Look, it's great to hear that the arrow is pointing up. That's what I take from all of the coaching hires. I see things were kind of on a kind of in limbo there, where because people were kind of getting a little anxious. There was no DC, and not only do we have one, but all of the hires are like, I'm feeling good, and I'm seeing the unity in the coaching staff also. I think we've always had that. I think that was one of the three things that John Mara was looking for in that 17-minute press conference when he introduced the new regime, leadership, and then within that, coordination and communication. And that's why we've been competitive for 2 years with a roster that still lacks enough talent to contend. So I really started feeling the arrow pointing up again. And there was some promise about that the last few games of the season. Even though we didn't win them all, we were 4-3, and I'm feeling a carryover of that momentum a little bit. And as far as the roster goes, which is what I told, is that Dan on the screening today?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Hello, Dan.
Hello, Dan.
Yeah. I picked this up from a post from the other writer, Eisen, yesterday that was posted on the website.
Other
quote
writer,
from Phil.
Eisen. Yeah, I
Yes,
love it.
well-
Yeah, go ahead. No, it's great. I love it.
Dan's got a big
All right.
smile.
All right. From Phil Simms at the Super Bowl, referring to the glory years in the 80s and into the 90s, he said, "We just had a lot of good players for quite a big stretch." And that's, to me, is what we're trying to get to. And I know there was no salary cap then, but there are recent examples that I think fit that quote. And one of them is the team that Shane and Dable came from. So my reality check on the roster, which is the way I said it to Dan, is maybe this is the year where we get over the hump in that direction. But if I learned anything the last 2 years, there's only so many starting caliber free agents you can bring in, and there's only so many draft choices you can have. You don't get 15
and
draft
Cliff,
choices.
This is not the first time you're going to hear me say this, and it's not going to be the last time you're going to hear me say this. If the Giants take a big jump next year, it's because guys that they've drafted over the last 2 or 3 years take a big jump. It's not going to be because of guys that they bring in for agency. It's not going to be because of guys they draft this year. It's going to be because the guys that they draft over the last 2 or 3 years play into form the same way Dexter Lawrence and Andrew Thomas did in their third years in the league. That's how that's going to go. And that's going to be the difference. It's going to be Evan Neal. It's going to be Kayvon Thibodeau. It's going to be that Azeez Ojulari. It's going to be that group of guys that you need to play to, and Thibodeau started doing that last year already, to play to the level that you want them to play, and you need them to play like stars if you're going to take a big jump, because you can't rely on big-ticket items in free agency. Bobby Okereke was a one big addition last year that worked out. Hopefully you get one more similar to that this year, but you're not going to get multiple guys like that. You just don't have the finances for it. And then you can't depend on draft picks to be great in their first year. It's just not the way the league works. So now you hope with the 6th overall pick, the guy can impact a little bit faster than guys that get drafted 20th, obviously, and that's a different conversation. But you need the young guys on this team to continue to improve and take jumps, guys that are already on the roster.
Because, you figure even in a dramatic year, you'll probably overturn a third of your roster. All right? That could happen. In a dramatic year, you could overturn a third of your roster. That's not too hard to do with your draft picks, with free agents, with guys come and go, with some guys who retire or get hurt or whatever. So obviously, if 2/3 of your roster is coming back, well, those are the guys you still have to lean on more heavily. I mean, that's just pure math.
Yep. Well, when I say turning point this year, I'm not necessarily talking about a big jump leap forward that's going to be visible in the record. It's going to be more an internal thing, the way Joe Shane sees it. Because I noticed in his last presser, he referred to there's still a talent problem. And there's no question that talent has been added, in my opinion, every year since 2018, but certainly since he got here, even more so. And I think the state of affairs in 2018 is something that we're still trying to recover from. I've said that too many times already on the show, but it's a fact, and I'm just hoping this is the year that I can forget about that 2018 state of affairs, because we could get over the hump and still have a kind of a record in between last year's and the year before, and be way further advanced. So that's so. John, you had mentioned a couple of weeks ago, a little longer than that already. Key cornerstone players, and you came up with maybe 4 or 5. So I'm thinking there's another category after that, and I don't want to disrespect guys who are on the roster, but there are not enough guys in the next level down from that, and I assume that's what Joe Shane is referring to. You know what I mean? I'm not sure what to call that next level down, but they're impact players in the league. They've delivered, whether it was in their first year in the draft or after being drafted or later.
How about reliable starters, Cliff? Do you like that? Reliable starters? How about that?
I'll take it. Take it. That could give us a chance to compete against the best teams. I mean, and the present roster, I've said already before, if it's healthy, it's pretty damn good. And I didn't think Daniel Jones was blowing smoke last year when he said we can compete with anybody. I thought he really felt that way, that they didn't feel like they were going out with a less than talented. So the question is, for a reality check on the roster, how much can you add this year to move that? What did you call starters?
Reliable starters.
How about foundational pieces? You like that?
Well, I think foundational
pieces
like that
are too.
A step above reliable starters.
Yeah. Well, that's where it starts.
Right. Yeah, I think that's where we are, and I think there's no doubt that I'm hoping that the strength and conditioning coach having a more advanced title means he has influence more influence than a strength and conditioning coach.
Cliff, it's late. We got to run. Appreciate the call, man. And look, Aaron Woolman will have plenty of say, just like the last strength and conditioning coach did in terms of how they train these guys up to keep them healthy.
For sure, and look. I know that the track record when Aaron was here was better with the injuries than in recent years since he left. Mm-hmm. Is that a coincidence? I don't know the answer to that. Nor does John, nor do the Giants, quite frankly. But what they do know is...
You use the data best you can, and you kind of roll with it.
That's it. You'll do the best that you can. And they were fortunate enough that when he went back to Indiana, he went home. That was an opportunity for him to go back home to his roots, and that's why he
went
took the
to school.
job.
Correct. That was like a childhood dream type thing of his.
He wasn't jettisoned for any reasons. They wanted him to stay.
Correct.
But he went back to his roots. Now, the Indiana coaching staff got changed out this past offseason. So now he was in a shuffle and got caught. And the Giants were like, well, please, you want to come back here? He's going back to his roots again. Only it's his pro roots. Instead of his college roots, it's his pro roots.
Belima got fired there this offseason?
Indiana.
Oh, Indiana. I was thinking Illinois. I'm sorry.
Bielema's at Illinois.
Yes, correct. I got the two programs mixed up. That's my
So
fault.
Indiana had coaching overturned. So this is a chance for him to go back to his roots, but it's his pro roots instead of his college roots. So great. But go for it.
Go check out if you want season tickets, folks, Giants.com/tickets, 2024 season ticket packages. Become a member. Great experiences, a lot of access, great stuff. Check it out, Giants.com/tickets. Of course, go download Giants TV, the Giants official TV streaming app. It's for free. Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire Sticks, whatever you got, go check it out. Giants mobile app. All our video content does pop up on there, as well as our YouTube channel, including all the shows we do right here on Big Blue Kickoff Live and our other podcasts like the Giants Huddle and Draft Season. For Paul Dottino, I'm John Schmelk. I will be running the show tomorrow, so when I screen, you'll be talking to me. I will try to get you off the phone so I can not talk to you as quickly as possible. I'm just kidding. Kind of. But it'll be Lance and Paul on the air. And we will talk to you tomorrow on Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented by Cadillac, the official luxury vehicle of the Giants. We'll see you next time.
Introducing the Lisa Chill Collection, your answer to hot nights. These mattresses beat the heat with ultra-cool covers, whisking away heat for the perfect sleep temperature. Save up to $460 on Chill mattresses and get 2 free pillows when you shop now. iHeart listeners can save an extra $50 off by visiting lisa.com/iHeart. That's LEESA.com/iHeart. Exclusions apply. See lisa.com for more details.
At Cocoa Beach, boredom doesn't stand a chance. Cocoa Beach is your authentic Florida beach town, packed with attractions to make your vacation the funnest yet. Whether you're catching waves, strolling along the iconic pier, or savoring delicious seafood, Cocoa Beach has something for everyone. A laid-back charm and lively atmosphere make Cocoa Beach your next unforgettable vacation. Explore the fun side of Orlando, Cocoa Beach on Florida's Space Coast. Visit LegendaryCocoaBeach.com. That's LegendaryCocoaBeach.com.